Why does the CCP dare to directly collide with Europe and the United States? Where does its confidence come from? This is the Jersey News Commentary Channel. In April 2026, with the successive introduction of the regulations on the security of industrial and supply chains and the anti-foreign improper extraterritorial jurisdiction regulations, the friction between Beijing and the Western world has officially escalated into a systematized, full-scale confrontation. While global observers still assess these policies through the lens of harming others without benefiting oneself, they have overlooked the essence. This is, in fact, a display of backbone and arrogance achieved by sacrificing the nation's long-term interests and the survival and development of over 1 billion people, in exchange for the absolute security of the ruling group. The official narrative often portrays domestic substitution as a backup or a life-saving medicine to prevent being choked at critical points. However, upon deeper examination, this is entirely a pseudo-proposition that cannot withstand scrutiny. If your technology were truly advanced and your products truly effective, why would you need a backup? True confidence should come from irreplaceability, not from low-level redundant construction. Moreover, even this so-called backup entirely originates from Europe and the United States. What among it is genuinely your own original creation? In high-end fields such as semiconductors, China is not backing up advanced processes, but rather using state finances to pile up an inefficient, high-energy consuming, backward system. Unable to cultivate innovation within the free soil of civilization, the CCP's logic has degenerated from pursuing excellence to merely avoiding death. This so-called domestic backup, in times of peace, is a heavy fiscal burden. In times of confrontation, it becomes an iron cage of self-imprisonment. Its only meaning is to allow the regime, under extreme isolation, to maintain basic administrative and surveillance operations. As for whether the technology used by the public regresses by 20 years, it is never part of their consideration. In short, it is sacrificing efficiency in exchange for survival under decoupling. One question that has never prompted reflection among the Chinese people is, why do Europe and the United States want to cut your supply chains? Why target you? Why do they not choke Japan, South Korea, or Singapore? Because the moment you had just filled your stomach, you began shouting far ahead, aspiring to lead the world, turning against the United States, causing disruption everywhere, treating Europe, the US, and Japan as mortal enemies, and colluding with evil forces such as Russia, Iran, and Hamas. We must point out that modern civilization, scientific standards, financial settlement systems, and even the spirit of the rule of law all have their underlying code built by the West. The CCP's so-called de-Westernization is a self-contradictory pseudo-proposition. Once detached from the Western-dominated SWIFT system, patent pools, and high-end markets, so-called self-reliance is essentially civilizational self-mutilation. If fully de-Westernized, what remains will not be a parallel modern system, but a primitive dark society that has lost its source of power. Let me ask, over the past 40 years of reform and opening up, which of China's material or intellectual products did not come from the West, or imitate the West? When Beijing chooses to engage in a hard collision with the Western civilizational system, it is in fact depriving the people of their right to share in the fruits of human progress. This collision is not meant to build a new order, but to construct a unique information cocoon of barbaric, arbitrary dictatorship. In this kingdom, power defines what is truth, what is compliant, and what is correct, thereby achieving a total cleansing of the minds of over 1 billion people, reducing Chinese citizens from global citizens into barbaric island subjects. Therefore, the real confidence behind the CCP's willingness to collide does not come from national strength, but from its unique and extremely ruthless monopoly over power, ideology, and resources. Iran has oil. Venezuela has oil and minerals. The CCP has human minds. Its core capital is its near-total control over the survival of more than 1 billion people, an absolute, bottomless capacity for extraction. In their view, as long as they control the gun, even if the economy regresses to a primitive state, as long as the privileged class can maintain order through high-pressure means, the suffering of the people is merely a statistical figure. The people's endurance is their strategic depth. Chen Yun once said, "The Chinese people are obedient and easy to govern." Wang Qishan once said, "The Chinese people can survive on grass for 3 years." Thus, the most despicable aspect of this collision is that the disaster is highly targeted. What sanctions and blockades destroy is the middle-class dream of ordinary people and the future of Chinese youth. Meanwhile, the privileged class, by monopolizing social resources, can continue to live lives of luxury even in times of scarcity and rationing. For example, during the Mao era, when 700 million people could not get enough to eat or wear, Jiangqing could still enjoy fresh lychees and fruits flown daily by the Air Force from Guangzhou, indulging in the extreme luxury described in the line. A single rider in red dust brings a smile to the concubine. None know it is lychees arriving. For the privileged class, as long as power is not lost, whether the outside world is a prosperous metropolis or a field of ruins is irrelevant to them. Because the 0.1% privileged class and the 99.9% of ordinary people are essentially two entirely separate parallel worlds. The essence of Xi's approach is complete Maoization, closing the doors and becoming local emperors. In this context, the people are worth less than animals in their eyes. As long as absolute regime security is achieved, even if hundreds of millions starve and society regresses by decades, as long as the tip of the power pyramid remains stable, it is regarded as a victory of confidence and self-reliance. In my view, the two regulations just introduced by the CCP are merely the first step in this collision with Europe and the United States. More and more intense confrontations will continue to unfold. There is no doubt that this collision will bring irreversible and devastating consequences to Chinese society. First, unemployment will surge even more violently. As foreign enterprises withdraw, high-quality jobs will become a memory of a bygone era, and the high-benefit packages of foreign firms will disappear forever. At the same time, tens of millions will lose their jobs. As of 2023, about 20.4 million people were employed in foreign-funded enterprises, accounting for roughly 3% of China's total workforce of 740 million. At its peak, foreign enterprise employment exceeded 30 million, and including related supply chains, total employment approached 40 million. Second, financial islandization is imminent. The CCP attempts to forcibly push de-dollarization and challenge the international status of the U.S. dollar. This is nothing short of a delusion. At the same time, it will sever ordinary people's connection to global wealth. When cross-border settlement becomes extremely difficult, people's assets will turn into piles of paper that cannot circulate internationally. Xi Jinping's delusional dream will bring endless disaster to hundreds of millions of Chinese people. Third, career paths will be completely blocked. With the withdrawal of foreign capital and escalating legal confrontation, tens of millions of highly educated young people will find that their knowledge has no place in a closed system. Its value will rapidly depreciate, the ladder of social mobility will be removed, leaving only submission to power. Fourth, the barbarization of social ethics. When survival becomes the only goal, when mutual harm becomes increasingly frequent, society will lose its last remnants of warmth and contractual spirit. This degeneration is more terrifying than economic collapse. It signifies the overall moral and civilizational decline of a nation. This collision is not an equal contest between two great powers, but rather a dictatorship sacrificing over 1 billion people as hostages in order to preserve the status of its local emperors. The CCP dares to collide because it controls billions of human minds, and because the privileged class possesses a safe haven immune from harm. Behind the CCP's willingness to collide lies the arrogance of the privileged class. Behind its so-called countermeasures lies the cold-blooded disregard for the lives of the people by those high above. The CCP constantly speaks of putting the people first, yet in its bones it treats people as livestock. That is why it has the audacity to collide. The CCP's new countermeasures are a passport to isolation and a tombstone marking the era in which the people are led onto the road of servitude.